Hallo, og velkommen til Bryllupspodcasten. Dette er podcasten for deg som skal gifte deg og planlegge bryllup. Jeg heter Eirik Halvorsen, og jeg jobber som bryllupsfotograf, og i denne episoden skal du få møte Kevin og Bryan, som kom helt fra USA til Norge for å gifte seg, med noe som heter Elopement. Og i denne episoden så skal du få vite mer om hva en elopement er, og vi snakker om budsjett for bryllup mot et budsjett for en elopement. Du får vite mer om hvor du kan elope, og hvordan det hele virker, hvordan du finner det ut. Og de snakker litt om usikkerhet rundt det å bli fotografert, og ting som man angrer på i ettertid av bryllupet. Så hvis du er av den visuelle typen, så kan du finne videoversjon av denne podcasten på bryllupspodcasten.no. Der finner du også bilder av det som vi snakker om, og linker og så videre. Husk å følge Bryllupspodcasten på Instagram og TikTok, og send en melding og si hei. Jeg vil veldig gjerne høre fra deg. Hello, and welcome to this episode, Bryan and Kevin. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, how about you?
I am good, thank you. And I'm super excited about today because we are going to talk about what an elopement is and also dive more into your story and see how other people can connect and relate to that. So first and foremost, can you just, in your own words, explain a little bit, what is an elopement?
Well, I mean, for an elopement, for what I believe it is, it's pretty much the two getting together and having more of a intimate, not necessarily wedding. Well, it's a wedding ceremony, but exchanging of vows versus the traditional wedding where you actually have a big group of people, family, friends, ceremony, and then having the reception. So you're not doing any of that. It's just you two, maybe some close friends and close family, if any case. But getting together and getting married is pretty much it. The elopement part, when it comes to going out of the country, I want to say is usually because the amount of money that you spend for a traditional wedding is what, maybe up in the $10,000 to $20,000.
Oh, you're so cute. In America.
Man, America, maybe
it's over $30,000.
There you go. So it's kind of like, why not use that money for what you two would like to do when you're exchanging your vows? In our case, it was Norway.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for elopements in general, I think that it really goes back to the beginning where it started, which is just the relationship between the two. So it was really special to just have the relationship and present it in a way where it was just us all over again. And to go back to the beginning and where we found our love for each other and being able to just share that with each other, I think is extremely important. The unfortunate part is we don't have supportive families. So for elopements in general, it's usually because something along the lines doesn't necessarily make sense for a traditional wedding, where for us it would be to have our families there. So his dad had already passed, and then his mom is definitely not supportive of
Ignorance is bliss.
Okay, in general. And then my parents, I haven't talked to my mom in over a year. And then my dad, the most we speak to each other is through emails for Amazon orders. So there's not really much that we speak of to each other. So there wasn't really a point into inviting them because there wouldn't have been support. And we'd rather just have it for ourselves.
Yeah.
I did actually have a best friend. She had volunteered to fly all the way to Norway with us as well. But I know she's trying to plan for her family too. And I didn't want to interrupt that. So I said it was okay. Bryan and I are kind of used to our relationship being our own. So that's what we kind of decided to do, was fly to Norway and make it our own.
Yeah. How and why did Norway come into the equation?
So his close friend, actually, the one that was going to fly out, we were trying to figure out ideas. Of course, I'm a Disney person, so originally it was like, oh, Disney wedding, but we weren't looking at that because that's even more expensive, actually. But then she had suggested an area that we actually wanted to go to, which was somewhere to see the Northern Lights. And we were kind of crossed between two places, Norway and Iceland. One of the other things is which one, actually, we had a third option, which was Alaska. But we were looking at which one is more LGBT friendly. And sadly, Alaska is not. So it went down to Iceland and Norway. As we kept researching and looking at the different things, we ultimately liked Norway better. Iceland is still on our list, don't get me wrong, but Norway was just up north where we took the photos. It's just very beautiful. It still feels unreal that we were there.
Yeah. Bryan did the research on like the scenery and stuff. I definitely delved into more of the photography stuff. So I definitely looked into photos that were taken by photographers in Iceland and Norway, and just Googling Northern Lights photography. Yours was one of like the top 5 that popped up onto the search, and the picture that you took of, I think it was Victoria and I forget his name.
Kyle.
And that photo was mesmerizing to me, and it just burned into my brain. So I kept, doing my other research, looking at other people's photography, and just the way that the photo was captured by you, and also the couple in it too, right? Because there's also just standard poses, and then there's one where there's an actual connection between the two. It's really hard to capture that as a photographer, I believe, because it's not just about poses. Sometimes it's really just letting people be relaxed in the environment that you create for them. And so it just burned into my head. So I just kept looking at a billion other different places, and I stressed about it, and I kept talking to him about it. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm done stressing about this. I know what I want and who I want, and I'm going to reach out to this person. So, of course, me meaning telling him to reach out to you.
To reach out to you.
But I was like, tell him a little bit of our story, convince him like we need to be the one that he needs to photograph. So that's kind of how it went. And yeah.
We didn't convince you. It was all true, what I wrote out and everything.
Well, yeah, but also I feel like, again, when it comes to photography, there needs to be a connection between the photographer and the people who are being photographed. And then you need to find somebody who's going to make you feel comfortable. I mean, obviously, I'm already not comfortable in my own skin, being different, being gay. So I don't know. It's hard finding somebody that you can connect on a level that's normal.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated the way you kind of conveyed to us when we were over in Norway about I think you said crooked, right? And how it's just another set of normal people. And that immediately made me, all of my anxiety that I normally have walking out on a daily basis disappear.
Yeah.
And that was a great way to set the tone for the entire day, because that was literally right in the beginning of our photo shoot that morning, where I was already, uncomfortable wearing a suit because I don't wear suits often and all that stuff. And then it was really nice that you had said that. And it wasn't even like I don't think that it was something that I said that triggered it, but it was just the fact that you brought it up naturally made me completely at ease for the rest of the day. So it was really awesome.
Wow, that's so interesting, and there's so much to unpack here. I don't know where to start, but first and foremost, thank you for such nice words. And it's interesting to hear your side of the crooked story, because that was just me being what is it called? Being present. I saw this crooked shed while we were walking down towards the beach, and it just struck me and came to mind. That's the Norwegian term of being gay, to be crooked, right? But it's not in a bad way. So I just felt like telling that story, or informing about that, and I didn't know that it kind of released that tension for you, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was poetic.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is really nice.
I thought it made sense, at least, and it made for a really cool photo. So one thing that amazes me and also saddens me is that you said you were looking for a photographer that is LGBT friendly, and you didn't find that when you were researching in Alaska, was it?
Not necessarily on photographers, but Alaska is one of the states where I think it.
I don't know if it's even legal over there
Yeah.
to get married.
To get married there, it's not. I don't
Yeah.
remember.
So, and the unfortunate part is whenever we travel, we have to, and a lot of people don't understand is that we actually have to look up whether or not we're allowed to be us.
Yeah.
Meaning we're allowed to be together. Are we allowed to order a room with one bed? Are we allowed to hold hands in public, kiss in public? Like, what are we allowed to do? Which is ridiculous, but also that's really what we have to do. And so every time we travel, I looked into Alaskan laws, I looked into Iceland laws and Norwegian laws. And Norway, actually, I think when I did my research, was one of the first European states that actually, or states, countries that allows LGBT and supports them. And so that immediately relieved that tension again, right? And then, like you said, when about the whole photographer thing, a lot of photographers either don't display LGBT photography if they support it, or they don't even like put. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can show your support, and I think that there's just not enough of that in, I guess, websites. And so it's a little bit hard for us to connect with somebody who might be comfortable with us, because you don't know other people's backgrounds. They talk about their biography as in, like, you know, them as a photographer, but you really don't know their background, their religious backgrounds, what they're okay with, not okay with. And really the only way to judge that is through photography. But I think the connection that I had with your photography and your blogs and the way you spoke about people at their core. And it wasn't about the shallowness of just weddings. And that made me feel a lot more at ease reaching out to you, because, I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's human. And making that about them and their story is really important. So, yeah.
Wow, I'm so glad you're saying that, because I don't specify that I photograph this and that type of people, or from this and that type of country, or skin color, or sexual orientation. I don't specify anything like that. Like you said, I'm just interested in the humans. I don't actually care about the wedding. And it's weird to say that as a wedding photographer, but it's the people and the connection between the people that is valuable. And when I focus on photographing that, it's more fun and more interesting for me. And I think for the client's perspective, the photos feel more real. They feel more like them, instead of, you know, here's a wedding photo from your wedding day in your wedding attire, right?
Yeah, most definitely. And I think the line that really got me from your website too was at the beginning of the day, hey, it's just Eirik. Because in reality, when people are going through a hard time, or they're anxiety, like you're having an anxiety attack or whatever, you grab onto them and you say, hey, it's just me, right? It's just you and them in that moment. And that's the magic that you're going to create together. That's the story that you're going to tell together. And I think that was so important to me, because when I have my anxious times, I need somebody to just say that, right? And it was so nice to read that point, because I was like, all right, I already know, like, you will take care of whatever anxiety I have for the day, whether or not I even need to say it, right? So I think there was, just like at the beginning when we did our photo shoot, I don't know if I was like nervous or what. I was just uncomfortable with I think everything, right? The PDA, because I don't do public displays of affection at all. I don't like the camera in front of your face was like a whole nother experience, right? And then me standing in muck, because I hate it, and squishy things. I don't like standing any of that stuff. But the fact that you caught onto it and you already like nipped it at its bud, like you brought it out and you said, let's just clear the energy. And it just made me, I don't know how to say it, but it like basically calmed me, because you had already said, you know, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And just relax, just be yourself and be in the moment, right? Be in your moment was, I think, the line that you used like a bajillion times during our photo shoot. And it really helped me channel back into where I needed to be. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, be in each other's presence.
Yeah,
That's the one.
that's the one.
Just
I was
feel
just-
each other.
Direction. I was okay with anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's different for every couple I photograph. And instead of me being very meticulous about posing, I want them to be in each other's presence in their own way. And I think everyone can kind of, have their own take on that. And that looks beautiful, right?
There was one moment, I'm sorry, it just reminded me because of the poses. I think it was one of our hikes after you did the photo shoot. We were like, let's do the pose. And it looked horrible.
Oh my goodness.
We were like,
It was at the same bridge we did the Northern Lights the next morning.
Okay, never mind.
Oh my
We
gosh,
couldn't
it was the
we
most
could not
awkward photo
capture the
ever.
exact same thing that you did. So we were like, okay, we're done with this pose.
It's not the same
It's
without
not the
Eric.
Okay, so tell me more about, I want this to be very informal or informational, for the people who listen. And here in Norway, we have a different way of doing a wedding if you're not planning to do a big wedding. We call it a Friday wedding at the courthouse, right? You just go there with your spouse, maybe you have your best man and your maid of honor, or maybe your parents. You sign the paper and you go to a restaurant and you have that expensive meal that you never do on a regular basis, right? And you call that a wedding. And many people don't think that it's worth photographing because, hey, we're just going to the courthouse. It's not a big wedding, so we don't need a photographer. Maybe we'll have some photos after, smiling for the thank you cards, and that's it. So an elopement is a little bit different than that. It's like the whole package is a little bit more based on adventure, at least from my experience. The most elopements that I've been photographing, it's from people from other countries wanting to go to Norway or other countries to experience something and do something just for them and have it photographed. So leading up to my question, which is, you already touched a little bit on the struggles on researching on how and where to elope. What are some top tips that you can give to the listeners about how to even start planning your elopement, like how to choose a country or location and how to work around that? Can you please elaborate a little bit on that?
Okay.
Sure, I can. I want to say to start off is, where would you two like to be in a very intimate, close area where you could either, if you're doing exchanging of vows during that time, or actually having someone do a small ceremony. I think just knowing the area that you would ultimately remember. So like for us, yes, we both had we did the courthouse ceremony because we have to get everything on paper, of course, and for it to be legal. But we will ultimately remember our vows being on that small little beach in Norway, in Senja. And we will always remember that because that was an area that we would wanted to be there, especially the Northern Lights, of course. But I want to say, to start off, is where would you two really, really, really want to go in a intimate moment?
And it really has to do with environment too, right? Like, I'm not necessarily comfortable with sand. But like, do you want a beach theme or do you want a forest theme or whatever you want? Norway has all. So that was kind of awesome. But I think really just choosing what kind of environment you want to be and the one that you'll be most comfortable in as well really helps kind of guide your way into that. We did extensive research. Well, he did extensive YouTube research. So he would YouTube a bunch of videos throughout Norway just to see kind of what area might be interesting, because obviously Norway has vast different amounts of like terrain and like, like the beach that we were at to the mountains that we climbed. So I think that gives you a nice visual in terms of your research that you're able to do. For me, I think it was more of just what kind of, okay, so for me, we had a 3-piece suit, right? Versus like a 2-piece suit. So I get hot very easily. So I wanted to know what kind of weather environment I was going to be in. And that I think makes a difference too, because if you're not comfortable in your own skin, meaning the clothes that you wear, or just being not comfortable in your own skin, it's really difficult to capture that moment with each other. So yeah, I think that was part of my research as well.
Yeah.
But
I do want to touch back on you could still do photography at a courthouse ceremony, because we had a photographer. I mean, granted, we did go to a beach area nearby, but some of our great photos were actually in the courthouse, just because the courthouse was a little bit more on the rustic side, and there was a lot of areas that we could actually do our photos and keep. I want to say we have some of them over here, but
yeah. But in reality, if you're doing an elopement, it's that intimacy that you don't want to forget those moments, right? Like I'm going to be honest, I didn't remember the vows that Bryan read to me. I had to have him send it to me, but I have a video that is evidence that he sent it to me. So now I can use them against him. But yeah, because I was completely in that moment, right? Like I was the environment that I was surrounded by, like just the entire day I was on this like high of being together with him, and this was our moment to like have our union, and that's what I was focused on, was that energy and riding off of that energy. So as much as I was focused on, I was listening to his vows, and in that moment afterwards, I completely forgot about them. Maybe it's just my short-term memory. I don't know. But it was so nice that like it was captured by you and Jessica, right? Like I didn't realize, and I was so hesitant about this whole vow video because I was like, I don't like hearing my voice. I don't want to see my face. With photos, you work angles, but with a camera, like you're just recording everything. It's nonstop. It's continuous. So I was really hesitant about it. But then he was like, no, let's do our vows. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I don't regret it at all. I wish that I even was less hesitant about it in the beginning, right? Because in reality, it means everything to me now. I've watched that video so many times. It's stupid. It's probably my top watched video on YouTube now because it meant so much to me. And the fact that you put our photography, it was crazy because I was expecting a 10-page spread, 10 photos or something as my preview for my photos, but it turned into this video and it was beyond me. Jaw dropped, didn't know what to say. I was like, give me a couple days to process this before you can even respond to an email to Eric, because this was beyond what I was expecting. And I actually didn't let anybody else see that video. I was so selfish with that video because it meant so much to me that I was like, I don't want anybody to see any of this stuff until I'm done processing it. But yeah, it was a moment that you, hands down, you can't compare to anything else, right? And the fact that it was on camera was something that I'll treasure forever. And that's something that I can never... thank you for, right? Because that meant so much to me. And to not have, I don't know, I was telling him when we got our album, to not have family to share all this stuff with, it really hurts. But in reality, the fact that we get to share this together and this video that we get to watch with our love and our bond together, it means that's enough for me. So yeah.
That warms my heart, guys. You said something interesting that I think a lot of people who plan their wedding feels. And you said you were hesitant to write your vows. You were hesitant to ABC and, things you have never done before. Yeah, you were hesitant to do it, or, probably because you didn't have the experience of doing it and then reliving it, right? So were there other things in this whole process that any of you felt some hesitation towards?
All of it. In reality,
yeah.
right? Because we're not trained
big step
to do any of this stuff. We don't learn this in school. You don't learn a lot of things in school, right? You don't learn to be a parent. You don't learn any of these steps in life. I don't feel like you would have parents who would teach you the steps or whatever. And unfortunately, we don't have supporting ones. So it was just even more blinding for us to go into this entire process. And it's not really necessarily normal for people to go and, have a photo shoot outside or have you really be vulnerable completely in public, reading your vows to each other. Like it's just weird putting words onto paper. It's just all different and all new. And with new things and with change and all that stuff, it really creates hesitancy. And I really feel like it was all fresh for us, but it was nice that we did it, and we did it with someone who made it like
Comfortable.
yeah.
It was all a foreign environment for us. So anything that we were doing was just, you would get that hesitancy. I mean, from the vows, it was, man, actually, he already knows, but I had written my vows first, just because I didn't know if he was going to surprise me in the end when we did our courthouse wedding, if he was going to do his vows there too. So I was already nervous with that and like just trying to get something down. And then I think a lot of people nowadays, because we have technology, will either Google, how do you start your vows?
Oh my gosh, yeah, we had to do that too. I didn't even know where to start. I was like, I know our story, but I'm like, do I talk about that? Because we know our story.
So we don't have to tell. I mean, we're not telling a big group like you would do in a reception.
Right. And we've been to our fair share of weddings where, like, I think one of the weddings that we went to, like, she had a novel.
Oh, her booklet. Yeah.
And I was like, do I have to write a novel? I'm not a very good writer. But yeah, it was crazy. But I think when we talk about hesitancy, I think it was, for me, really, it was being photographed, right? Because I built this wall up of not being able to show public displays of affection because of, being gay and how society I wouldn't even say tolerates it. I definitely won't say it accept it. But I feel like I've always had to put this wall up. So therefore, me being public about all of this stuff and, displaying all of it, and walking out in public in a foreign country that I don't know, just, I don't know, being in that environment was very scary for me to do. But then it's just Iric. Yeah. I think it really came down to that for me, right? Because we built this relationship before, right? With our Zoom meeting, just meeting each other, before we even like booked each other. It was just that conversation before really made everything at ease, to you really guiding us from coming into your country and letting us know what, the roads and how that works and the weather, and being so kind and sending us the book, Finding Your Norway, your own Norway, right? Or Finding Your Norway?
No, Finding Your Norway.
Yeah. So that, I mean, all of it. It was just so heartwarming to realize that you're not just going over to have a photography session. You're actually like gonna hang out with somebody and have a connection with them. And we were talking about how even when we went to, when we had our off time, right? Off the camera time, it was really nice connecting with you and Jessica, right? Like it was building a relationship, and that's what we yearn for, is having actual connection with people. And that was really nice to have.
Nice to hear. And to the listeners, this whole elopement lasted for, I think, 3 days. So we met on Senja, and we had the whole evening together before the day of the shoot. And then the day of the shoot, we just started in the morning, and we drove around, and we found some beautiful locations that we photographed. And I remember also connecting with you guys. I think it's important for me as a photographer to know more about you and what makes you tick. And also make you trust me. Like you said, Kevin, I'm just a person too. I'm
Yeah.
Eric. I'm not a scary photographer, right? And I believe that when you trust in me, I can get you to open up a little bit more, and the intimacy and the personal space and personal touch of everything becomes more open. And we were extremely lucky with the weather, right?
Yes.
I talked to you guys about the weather many times before even coming to Norway. And one of the things that is very difficult for me, I get those inquiries often, is that people say, hey, we want to get married in Norway under the Northern Lights. How much does it cost? It's like, yeah, I understand, but it doesn't work that way, right? So I think I tried to prepare you as well as I could, and downplaying the whole Northern Lights thing, because you don't know if it will ever show up. And we were extremely lucky that on the actual day, in the evening, we went out just to, hey, let's check, because the app says it should be a display right now. And the sky just exploded while we were there.
Yeah, I think that the expectation of it, if I had expectations of having the Northern Lights, I think that probably would have thrown off my game for the entire day for the photo shoot. And so I really appreciate, the fact that you kind of prepared us with the weather in general, right? Like, it can literally rain, pouring rain, and then 5 minutes later, or even down the road, it's just completely clear. So I think that mindset that I had, I was already prepared for whatever weather conditions we were going to be in. But in terms of the Northern Lights part, I that would have just been the cherry on top. But my mindset wasn't focused just on that, right? Even though that was kind of why we initially thought of what we wanted, right? Was our photo shoot to be underneath there. Like, it's not all just that. It's that entire we're just talking about adventure that day, right? Really trusting into, like you said, you and the photographer in general. Like, oh my gosh, I don't know where. I mean, I guess Jessica would know, but your gut feeling when it comes to locations and lighting and whatever it may be is absolutely beyond me, because I couldn't imagine just driving and you're like, okay, just walk through the meadows over there. And then we get that one where we didn't even complete and get all the way to the spot that you wanted us to get to. That one of the most favorite photos is that area where we had the mountain in the back and there was that tree over there too. Because we couldn't get, remember which one I'm talking about?
Oh, no, we had to go down.
Yeah, we had to go down and we were just like busting through leaves and stuff. But we never got to it because it was too mushy. But it was just the fact that like we immersed ourselves into it, right? And really trusting into you that it's going to be a great shot. I'm like, how is this going to be a great shot? I'm covered. Well, my shoes I felt like was covered in mud. And then I'm looking through and I'm like, how is this going to happen? Because I am miserable walking through this. But the photo, I can't. I just can't. And then later on in the evening when we were chasing sunset, and you just turned it into literally a hole in the wall, and it turned out to be this like multicolored meadow patches, and it was just amazing.
Like, where did this come from?
I would have rather done what we did than to probably drive to the end, and get that regular typical sunset shot, right? Like, what we did had so much more meaning to it because it was an adventure that we did to scale that mushy hill together. Yeah. I'm talking about mushy. I don't like textures, if nobody can tell. But just to scale that, and then finding those, I forgot what those shells are called, but finding those ones, that was fun too. It was just a little adventure and within our adventure within the day, and it was so nice just to do. And as much as you said it was just like a typical photo, right, with the rings, it meant a lot to me because I was like, I need to go find one that's like really big or small or not cracked or whatever it might be. But it was nice and relaxed is where I'm trying to get at. And you just really have to trust in the process, right? And I think that was my new favorite line that I liked, is trust in the process. But really, if you don't trust in the process, then how will you get what you want at the end?
But for the Northern Lights, it was just, again, like you said, it was just more, we didn't have it as an expectation. It was just more of a bonus if it happened. I mean, I know we had you stay a little bit extra, just so that if it were to happen the next couple of days, but even if it didn't happen, we weren't going to be disappointed.
Yeah. I don't know how many people, once we came home, told me I've gone to go see the Northern Lights,
and they didn't
twice
see it,
or 3 times, and I've never seen it. I don't know how you got it on your photography day, right? Like I was like, I don't even know what to tell you, because the day after, right when we were about to leave, a storm came in, right? Like it started raining. So I don't.
And actually, the day that we got there, because we got to Tromsø first.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It was cloudy. It was actually sprinkling and raining when we landed. And then that night, it was very cloudy. The next day was the one where we were like, it's clearing up.
Yeah.
It's clearing
And we actually tried in Tromsø. We hiked. Oh my!
Oh yeah, we hiked the
the
Sherpa stairways.
Yeah. So the railway was closed. So we were like, no, we're gonna hike it. We're gonna hope to see the Northern Lights. Oh my gosh, that hike was ridiculous.
Yeah, everyone's gonna say it's not particular.
I'm sure, because for Americans it was ridiculous. With small hills, not mountains. It was crazy. And when we got up there, we were really waiting. We were freezing cold, and we were waiting for the lights, and that never happened. So, I mean, it really is a hit or miss.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm thankful for the experience, the entire experience in itself, right? Norway is gorgeous, and really being in that environment and enjoying every moment of it is what you just got to do.
Yeah.
Northern Lights is just a cherry on top.
But I think the biggest takeaway is I wouldn't have it as an expectation.
No.
Just kind of go in there. If you're going for photos, expect the unexpected. If it's raining, have a good time. If it's sunny, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I live in Norway, and I have experienced the Northern Lights 2 times.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Yeah. So it's not an everyday thing for sure. And also it's further north from where I live. So I have to go there, just like you, I have to go to that area to get the chance to see the Northern Lights as well.
Yeah.
But, excuse me, you touched on trusting the process, Kevin, and my gut feeling. And I can't explain my gut feeling. That's just something that I've learned to trust more and more. But I think the whole thing about, quote unquote, is this really a location? It ties down to when I started photographing weddings. Here in my local area, we have like 3 spots that everyone goes to for their wedding portraits, right? So when I started meeting with potential clients, they all talked about, yeah, and then we want to go to that beach or that forest for our wedding portraits. And it was killing me because it killed my creativity. I didn't want to shoot in those places. It's so cliche, and I know I can do so much more. So I started to inform my potential clients that you don't need an area to look beautiful with your eyes for it to be a beautiful photos. You know, it's up to me as a photographer, what I include in the photo, the composition, the focal length, all of these technical things that I control. And I turn something into a beautiful photo wherever we are, right? So I try to use that to teach my potential clients beforehand, like before booking, to trust in me. Hey, you guys be yourselves, and I will be there and photograph that. So I started to speak in more general terms. Do you guys like the ocean? Do you like the mountains? Do you like the city? You know, what area do you guys feel, nice in? And let's use that as like the primary backdrop and then go from there. And I will find spots with lights or beautiful scenery or interesting shadows or whatever it may be, and create beautiful images from there. And I think from there on, it just became kind of that gut feeling, hey, let's go around the corner here. I feel something, or there might be something interesting here.
Yeah, it was.
We were like, where are we stopping now?
Yeah.
What is over here?
Also, that's one of the reasons why I never location scout, because when I arrived the day before, if I was driving around and planning, hey, let's stop here for some photos, let's stop here for some photos, probably looked nice there and then, but the day after, the weather and the light is different and the mood and everything is different. So I could try to force some photos out of a location and it wouldn't be good, instead of, go over there instead.
And I think that was something also on your website that caught my eye too, because I think you talked about how you were thrown into a lot of weather conditions in the past, and being able to shoot that. And that is, I have a little bit of photography background, but that was enough for me to be willing to accept you as a photographer, because it was just, in reality, I did like I said, when we did our research and our elopement in Norway in general, right? Like you get a lot of warnings about how the weather changes quite instantly. And if you don't have somebody who can work with that and also make you feel comfortable in that, and know that you'll still capture a great moment, it's not something that you necessarily want to book for unless you can find somebody who is able to do what you're able to do. So yeah, really trust in the process, right? Because I was ready for whatever weather was happening, but I also knew that you would take care of us regardless. So.
Yeah. I was actually kind of expecting the photo shoot that you did where it rained on them, where it went right.
Oh yeah, the bows were completely
so. Yeah. I was like, oh, we might have one of those. It's fine. I trust in it.
Nice. I don't want to blow smoke up my own ass, but how important is the photographer choice in a situation where you are planning an elopement in a different country?
Well, I really feel like the photographer, it's really important for you to choose somebody who knows their environment well. It's not even the location in itself, right? I think it's just the fact that for me, when you, like an example was when I think we had parked in some lot, and then that's when we started walking through the bushes in order to get to that, mountain scenery. You afterwards, we walked by a house, and there was a lady that was there, and you spoke to her in Norwegian, but you were just greeting her, right? Just knowing that the environment that you're in and being respectful of the environment that you're in, but still also immersing yourself in that environment, it meant a lot to me, because it's, at the end of the day, you kind of even told us, right? Like, we're in these people's backyards and all that stuff. And you didn't mean it in a way where it's like, oh, like, I don't know, like in a bad way, right? Like where we are, but it's just being respectful of the environment that you're in. I think finding somebody who does respect that environment makes everything a lot easier, because you're able to go to whatever lengths you need to go, but also be mindful of where you are. Really creates a difference when it comes to finding a photographer in whatever country you're in. Because I feel like you said, when you go to these spots where they're just like the typical photo shoots or this typical scenery, a lot of people and a lot of tourists don't respect that environment. And it honestly turns into trash after a while. I think we went to Paris after we met up with you, and I was so shocked by what Paris is now than from 10 years ago when I went there, right? Like, some of these historical spots have turned into trash because of the tourism that's gone there, because the sad part is the tourists go there and they trash it, but then you add the photographers who go with them, who do these photo shoots, and having them climb whatever they're climbing or whatever it might be, and it messes that whole entire area up. And to find somebody who doesn't do that, it's quite difficult, because at the end of the day, it's all about transactional business, right? And it's money for these photographers. But to find somebody, when we had our first Zoom meeting, I knew that the connection that we had, I knew I could vibe who you were as a person. And that person was extremely respectful of us as humans, but also extremely respectful of them and their own country. And I feel like that is really important to me, finding a photographer, because respect is everything, and it goes such a long way. And it goes to integrity too, right? Doing things when no one else is looking. We weren't staring at, well, we were, we were staring at you when you were having the conversation with that lady at the house. But, you know, in reality, it meant a lot to me when you did have that connection, right? Because it was just you being respectful and it was just you being you. And finding photographers like that is hard, right? Because you were talking about like the scary photographer. There are scary photographers out there, right? They want you to do a certain pose or they're used to a certain way of photography. They're not as fluid with things. They have a structure. You are so fluid with everything, right? Like whatever we don't want, you're able to change. Yeah, accommodate. And it's hard to find someone who's that fluid because people aren't always comfortable, right? People aren't used to certain things or they want a certain thing, but you know, they don't know what they don't know. And for you to explain things to us when it comes to certain, you know, like ways to pose or ways to be in each other's presence or whatever it may be, it just made the whole entire experience more relaxing.
But how do you navigate? I mean, everyone and their mom is a photographer nowadays, right? There's websites and Instagram accounts everywhere and with seemingly good photos, right? How do you navigate? How do you find and sift through all the quote unquote bad ones? Like how do you find the right photographer? And I'm not talking about me now, like in general, like for you, how did you find the right photographer? What were you looking for?
I really had to read through bios. I had to read through bios. I really appreciated that you had a blog. It wasn't just like, here is my artwork and this is the location that it was at, right? It was really a story that you created. And at the end of the day, you're recreating our story through your lens. Mm-hmm. And to read one person's bio is one thing, right? They can put their resume on their how many years of experience they may have or whatever it may be. But it's another thing to try to connect with people through the way that you write and through the way that you capture people's story through your lens. And that's the first thing was if I saw any type of generic wedding photos, they were immediately out because I didn't care for the generic stuff. If I wanted it, I mean, I could have put a selfie stick on or whatever it may be, right? Like
what's a generic wedding photo to you, Kevin?
I mean, gosh, walking down the aisle, the shoes photo next to each other, the dress hanging up, like whatever it may be, right? Like, I don't know, like the first moment, I mean, I get that it is important, but like first moment for me, like parents don't mean anything. So first moment with parents or first look, right? Like, I think that anything beyond, because we're not normal people in what society is determining, right? So anything that is normal for me is immediately out of the window for me, because I don't want to be like everybody else, right? I don't want the same car as everybody else. I want to be different, and I'm proud to be different, and therefore I want my photographer to be able to capture that difference too, and not be in a square and be, you know, completely blocked off by generic photos and the background that everybody has. I think even when we had talked about location in Norway, right? When you say a lot of people go to, I'm going to chop it up, but Lofoten Islands, a lot of people go there. And even our research says that that's the place to go, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to be that person in that same area. As much as the photos are gorgeous, I didn't want the same thing as everybody else, because when you show it to somebody or when you look at it yourself, you're like, oh, great. So I was just a tourist. So then I just had a tourist wedding, which doesn't even make sense to me. You spent all this time, flew all this way to then have a generic wedding. And to make it your own, the only way you can make it your own is to immerse yourself.
Yeah.
And trust in the process.
Yeah, that the tourist photos that you speak of, that's how I feel about wedding photos on Iceland. And it's actually gone so far that it's like many years ago, actually, it started to be a problem. So there are like 5 spots on Iceland that everyone goes to. It's a black beach. It's with the pillars thing and the plane, and there's like 1 or 2 waterfalls. Right?
Waterfall?
Yep. Yeah.
We know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. And you've probably seen all of those photos. And there are so many people who see those photos and they think, ooh, we would like that. So they find a photographer who would like to do that. And I kid you not, photographers do that for free, right? So I've gotten so many inquiries from couples who want to fly me to Iceland to do their elopement photo shoot or pre-wedding photo shoot or whatever it is, but they don't want to pay, right? And they just go to the next photographer where they find someone who does it for free. They do it for a plane ticket, right? And then you end up with all of these cookie cutter touristic wedding photos. A photo on the plane, a photo on the black beach, a photo in front of the waterfall, and you just look like everyone else.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, Lofoten in Norway is becoming the same thing, and also a place called Geiranger, which is also very touristic. You have like one spot that everyone goes to. And one thing that I always try to do, it's been a mantra for me as long as I've been photographing, it's to never take a couple to a location where I have previously photographed a couple. So I am challenging myself to always go new ways and find new places. And if I go to a similar location, I try to photograph that location in a different way. So I don't do the same thing with the same perspective and same background and same pose as a previous photo that I did, because I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't pay a photographer a lot of money and then, just be put into the square, like you said, Kevin, and just look at my photo and then after the fact, see all the other photos online that are exactly the same photo as mine.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't understand how people can see all of these locations that are beautiful, right? And they want to be photographed in it. But if you know that this country or wherever you are has something that special, know that the rest of the country is also that special, right? Like, oh my gosh, there were so many different locations where we wandered off with our hikes or wherever it may be. That was like, this is just as amazing, if not even more amazing, right? Because it's a spot that nobody has been to.
Yeah.
And it was just that moment was so much more special than to go to probably even have to wake up at 4 a.m. to line up wherever it may be to take that one shot that everybody else has. I mean, it's great when you're doing like solo hikes, but this is your time together to create your own memories together, right? And make it your own. Can't make it your own if you're taking a photo of exactly the same spot that everybody else does.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Is there anything in this entire process of planning and doing your elopement that you, is there something that you regret not doing?
I think for me, was being more relaxed in the beginning. Because,
but you can't plan for that.
You can't.
No.
But, I don't know.
I don't think so.
No.
So let's flip the question. Is there anything that you regret doing, like after the fact, something that you after the fact understood or thought about, well, that was unnecessary?
Nope.
I really don't think so. I mean, that day went very smoothly.
Yeah, I couldn't
And
ask for a better day.
Yeah, we were just trusting wherever you took us, and we didn't have I don't think we had any regrets on the places that you took us.
Yeah. I think in reality, it's trusting more into you. I feel like I regret not doing more. And I think it went all the way back to the house, right? Before we even started getting dressed, you're like, let me just take some photos of you in the bedroom. And I'm like, oh no, let me clean this bedroom right now.
Oh yeah.
Because that's all OCD. I can't have these photos. That was one of my favorite photos. It was that photo that you caught of us in our bedroom. I was
in the bed.
Yeah. I love that photo. It means a lot to me. And I think it was just me being me, right? Like but I really think that trusting you as a photographer and trusting you as a person was just something that I should have just started from way before, right? Like I think that the nervousness is one thing, but it was also you as a person, right? Like really trusting somebody else to take these moments of you.
Yeah, I think that's a valuable piece of self-critique for me, because that means that I didn't prepare you well enough before that moment. So therefore, I didn't get that access and having you being comfortable with me being in there. And it sounds kind of dirty when you say me photographing you in your bedroom, and it's not like that at all.
Not like that.
So,
like that.
So both of you were dressed, and I was there, or you weren't like fully dressed, but I was not there for any like dirty photos.
Wrapping all of our suits and stuff.
It was all about telling your story about the morning when you woke up in this house on Senja and starting the day off. So it's good to hear that I have room to improve. You know, I have areas where I can be even more like accommodating or informational upfront, because I think having access as a photographer, that's the best way to capture the most real photos. So if you ever feel that I am there for the sake of a photo shoot, you know, it will feel like a photo shoot, and you will feel that you have to perform. You will feel that, am I sitting with my good side toward the camera? You know, all of these things. You know, shoulders back and whatever. So I think I'm just thinking aloud while we're talking right now. One thing I could have done, I could have started photographing the day before in the evening, right? I could start getting rid of those feelings right away. So in the morning off, then you would be already comfortable with me being there with the camera.
That's actually... So I'm not gonna lie, I feel like you did tell us though that you were gonna take photos in the beginning because it was gonna start off the day, but it's just I think it just still feels unnatural when someone comes in it. Like,
oh yeah, I mean,
if I remember correctly, like I remember you did tell us
you can prep people a million ways, but I you're so kind. As kind as you are and take it upon yourself, in reality, there's a lot of like, I mean, you remember this way back when you had your wedding too, but just being photographed is completely different experience, right? And a lot of it does fall on other people as well. Just kind of how you were talking about like having a good side or sucking it in, or in this person's case, pulling his pants up too high. Whatever it may be. It's just, you just got to let all that stuff go when it comes to, it's about you, right? And it doesn't matter how you look, because your loved one will love you no matter what. And your photographer, I mean, saying it in the nicest way, they don't care either, right? Like, whatever environment you are, however your hair is in the moment, it's just enjoy your moment together. And like you said, really just be in each other's presence is really what's important. And I think if I just focus all of my energy in just being in Bryan's presence, I would have forgotten all of that stuff. But it was so much self-consciousness on myself, right? Like, I'm sure there's other people who have a certain good side. I know I used to like be crazy about a certain side as well, but I mean, just really focusing your energy into each other is really what matters. Yeah. And again, really just trusting into your photographer that no matter what happens, it's going to be a great shot. So you don't need to work your angles or whatever it is yourself. Let your photographer do it. Because he knows the best, not you, unfortunately. So I appreciate that you want to take that on yourself, but I'm not going to let you take that one. Yeah. That was the thing.
trying to remember, there was you had said something. What was it? Because for me, being a bigger person, I do get a little bit self-conscious. I think there was one moment where you were taking photos, and I am self-conscious with taking off my shirt in front of other people. So waking up, hair messed, and then of course my little lovely double chin was always making me a little bit nervous. But then you had mentioned about when you take photos, if you don't like what you look like in the mirror, because that's what you remember what he said on that one?
Oh, do you
No.
mean the mirrored version of yourself?
Yes.
Yeah. So I can explain, because that's a really good point. When anyone look at themselves in the mirror, you're actually looking at a mirrored version of yourself. You are the only person in the world who experience your looks that way. Everyone else will see you in the real way, the not mirrored version of you. So when I take a photo of you, when you look at that photo, you're looking at the not mirrored version of yourself. And that's why sometimes you can feel a little awkward, or you can feel that you look a little different in photos, right? Because you're used to looking at yourself the other way around. So for instance, if you have the split in your hair from one side, you used to having that split on, or when you look in the mirror, you look at that split from the side that you see, right? But it's actually the other way around, because everyone else see that split on your hair in the normal way.
Yep. That's why I was like, you know what? I'm accepting how I look. And I know this is not how I normally look, but this is gotta accept it.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm glad you did, Bryan, and that the fact that you guys just trusted the process. Let's use that term. I like it. The fact that you trusted the process and just was present in the moment on the day, it made your photos look beautiful. I mean, you look like yourselves in your photos.
It's still unreal. Whenever we have the album, and we actually have this one like album that's playing right now, and we're just looking at the photos, and I'm like reliving it.
So, are you guys comfortable talking about your investment in your elopement? Because obviously there's a lot of costs around, flying to a different country. You have flights, the accommodation, there's food, rental car, the photographer, and there's so many expenses, right? What were your, did you plan a budget beforehand, or were you planning to just hey, it costs whatever it costs, let's just do this? What was your approach beforehand when thinking about and talking about money for this whole project?
I think initially we had said 20, didn't we?
Well, I mean, I think our budget. So, are we talking about photography budget, or are we talking about our entire?
I'm talking in general, because I don't want this podcast to be overly about me as a photographer. I want it to be a little bit more general. So, of course, you can be open about what you paid for certain things around your elopement. But for someone planning to elope, right? Your perspective earlier on, you said people are spending XYZ on a wedding day. So why don't we spend at least half that budget on, our elopement? And you can have this amazing experience in a different country. So with that as the premise, how were you planning how much money you were going to spend on this?
So, I think for ours, it was based off of the entire trip. Our elopement wasn't only our vows in Norway. We also made it into a kind of like a honeymoon, pretty much, because we wanted a European somewhat trip where before Norway, we were in Germany, and then after Norway, we were in France. So I think that kind of lies in with what your budget would be on if you're going to turn this elopement into also a trip that you can spend together with. Not spend financially, but, spend literally together with. And I think that's why we had set, I want to say initially it was, I think 15,000. And this is including tickets for you, and then everything else, hotels, train tickets, all the airplane tickets, not necessarily accounting for food and souvenirs, but I want to say we started off with 15. Did it go above it? Yes, it did.
Yeah.
But the hard part with that is just because we went to different countries and we wanted to get, me, wanted to get a lot of souvenirs.
But I think it was also there are certain things that we wanted to. that we could have chosen a cheaper route, but we wanted to elevate our experience because it was an experience for just us, right? And it was for us to enjoy. We've had our very large fair share of traveling with other people. But once you have more people, you have more opinions, you have, people wanting to do certain things that you don't necessarily want to do. So it was nice to just choose something that we wanted to do and experience together. So there were certain things that we might have chosen that might have been a little bit more expensive. So that might have increased the price tag a little bit, or a lot bit. But in reality, we started with the $15,000 budget. So I think 10 grand of that was towards, flights and stays and certain activities that we wanted to do. And then the other 5 grand was towards our photography, was where the budget was kind of around. And then, of course, you so graciously offered to be on call for the Northern Lights for 3 nights. So then that's when we we revamped our budget a little bit, right? Because in reality, we already kind of knew what we were going into, that it might not be an opportunity, but like, why not increase our opportunity to see the Northern Lights, right? And the only way you can do that is add more time, and time is money, and which is perfectly fine, right? So that was a nice thing to do. We could have all carpooled together, right? You and Jessica and Ryan and I, we could have all carpooled together, met up on the same, got on the same flight, met up and drove to Senja ourselves, but we wanted to do our own exploration. And so we decided to get 2 different cars. So that was, an expansion of our budget as well. So there are many ways that you can decrease the amount that you're using versus increase it, right? But it's really to user preference. For us, at the end of the day, it was for just us. So we were very much comfortable spending that money because it's going, the food that we ate was going into our bellies. And and the adventures that we had, we were having it together, and it's stuff that we will never forget. And it was a trip of a lifetime. And in reality, this trip signified our love too. So, and we, as much as we had a budget, we didn't, I was very comfortable with spending more or spending less. But more was more of the option. But yeah, in reality, I was okay with all of the things, and the everything that we looked at for prices and stuff were all reasonable. Just, like the extra car, right? I was like, okay, it's like I think it was like a few $100 extra, but it gave so much independence for both couples, right? Like to be able to do whatever they wanted to do, and go wherever they wanted to go. And that freedom and flexibility of coming and going whenever you want. We had a shared Airbnb, but in reality, we had our time together, and then we also had our separate times together with our hikes and stuff. So it was really nice to have the freedom to do whatever you needed to do, So it wasn't so like tense and like getting cabin fever or whatever it may be.
And we both, Jessica and I also appreciate that a lot. I think it was a great way to spread out the chances of experiencing the Northern Lights. We just happened to experience it on day 1. Yeah. But speaking of the food, how about that sashimi?
So we have, every time someone asks how is Norway, how is the food, we always like the salmon, just the salmon is really good. And sadly, we have Costco here, and we've bought Norwegian salmon, and it's not the same.
Oh my gosh, it's not the same at all.
There are a couple of times where we're like, we miss the food.
Yes,
sorry.
So I don't usually eat raw food at all. Like it freaks me out because of the texture and all that stuff. But I was like, no, immerse myself into the culture. Try it out, right? Oh my gosh, did I appreciate that? I just jumped for that one.
Yeah.
Because it was so good. It was like butter.
Even for me as a Norwegian, I'm used to pretty good quality fish, but this was beyond anything. I've had a lot of sushi here in Norway and other places in the world, but this particular sashimi, the salmon sashimi, what was the restaurant called? Do you remember?
I don't.
Was Chinese or Taiwanese restaurant in Finnsnes.
I think it's a Thai place.
Is it Thai place?
Thai place?
Oh man, I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
Like,
Yeah.
While you're talking, I'm gonna look it up.
Okay, cool. It was amazing. So for anyone listening, if you're ever on Senja and you go to Finnsnes, you have to go there and eat sushi. That was a great experience. And we actually ended up going back there for every day too, right?
Yeah, yes, we did. We tried all of the other foods too, which was also great. But that sashimi was, wow.
It was called Tiger Sushi.
Tiger sushi, yes. And also, I want to give a shout out to Agathe Ledoux, I think her last name is, or pronounced that way. She wrote the book Find Your Norway or Finding Your Norway. I bought this book and had her send it to you in prior to you coming here to Norway. So can you talk a little bit about that book? How did it help you prepare you mentally for what to expect, in Norway?
Oh my gosh, I inhaled that book in a day. Like I just nonstop read that book because it was so informative in terms of how to prepare yourself for the weather, how to prepare yourself for even though we did our own like Airbnb booking and stuff like that, I didn't know that there were other websites that more Norwegians use in order to do lodging. Also like the apps for just weather apps or, Northern Lights apps to like traffic maps and hiking maps and all of that stuff. I didn't know that there were specific ones, of course, because we're used to American stuff. I didn't know there were specific ones to Norway and catered to Norway and its terrain and just all of that. So it was so informative just reading all that stuff and then really learning that there are certain layers. It was funny because when Jessica was preparing herself to go out into the freezing cold weather, she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm putting this should be on my first layer," and I was like, "That was in the book. That was in the book." I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is real." So it was really nice getting prepared for all of that, right? And I think the weather was a huge topic. I think she had this spread. There was a couple photos where it was like, within 15 minutes, the sun changed, the weather changed, and it really put into perspective. You can read all about it, but just having things to, photographs to kind of to see that and put an image to it was really nice to have that visualization. And then also the drastic amounts of seasons that you guys have too between or like all the months. Like I was looking at them all and I was like, that is crazy how it is, right? Like how drastic it is and reading about that. So
but she had also different, like several shots, same thing describing, the different seasons or the different times of weather, but there was like multiple areas and I was like, man, that's a lot of detail right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad you like that book. I'm going to purchase that book as a gift for every client who books me for their elopement or any adventure session like that in Norway, because I think it's a really informative book when you're not from Norway.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I think that people, I want to say like they're hesitant about purchase. I mean, for me, okay, I'm hesitant about purchasing certain books when they're like, your guide to wherever, or I don't know, say Norway for Dummies, but something like these travel books that they have out there, right? Because there's so many travel books that are out there, but is it really written by a Norwegian, right? Because if you don't have somebody who has lived it, how can they speak of it?
Mm-hmm.
Did they just do the research on it? And how real is it, right? So to have an actual book like that was amazing to me because I really connected with that book versus just reading facts out of another book. And I really appreciated it. It was so, because we were actually going on a trip. We had picked up the package as we were heading out to a weekend getaway, and I opened it up and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this was sent to us. And then I was stuck on that book. Like we checked into the hotel and the first thing I jumped on the bed was I started reading that book. So I appreciated really much that you had sent that to us. And it really prepped me and gave me a mindset on how to put it. And of course I finished the book and he flipped through it. But I was prepped his brain too.
But then because he already read it, I was like, okay, and what? Why would I do?
Yeah, I was like bookmarking things. I was putting things on my phone just as like, tidbits and reminders as well. Because I think for him, especially, I let him read because he drove in Norway, right? But I think it prepared him a little bit more in terms of how to drive in Norway.
I am not gonna lie, that's still y'all's roads. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a surprise to many coming here. The roads, we don't have these like 10-lane highways. It's not the 405 in Los Angeles, right?
No, it is not.
Gosh.
And what was nice over there is that, I mean, for us who live in Southern California, we're always wanting to get there like fast and quick. But there was nice and a leisure road.
Yeah. It's crazy driving through those mountains and then you're like on the other side of the mountain and then you make a circle and then you're on a different one. It's just crazy to me. And the fall colors were, I'm colorblind, but I'm still amazed. But yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because now, after you've seen the images as a colorblind person, like, first of all, can you explain a little bit about your color blindness?
Yeah, so I'm actually on the spectrum of color blindness. A lot of people have two colors that they're, say, colorblind to, 2 or 4. But for me, I'm actually on the spectrum of total color blindness. So I don't see grayscale, which is on one spectrum, end of the spectrum, where like dogs do. They just see completely grayscale. I'm on the other spectrum where I see all the colors, but in reality, it really doesn't trigger or register as a color to me in my head. So as much as I'm able to see them, I always tell people it's like as much as you're able to hear a different language, you don't necessarily understand a different language, but you can kind of make it out in terms of like for language, it'd be like gestures or, body movements. But for me, for colors, it's just association. So I associate, like male and female colors, like, the pinks and the purples with more female colors. So I wouldn't assume a male would wear those colors. Granted, we live in a different generation where people do wear those colors now. So it throws me off a lot. But when I was a kid, that's what we learned, right? Was like boys with blue and girls with pink. So in reality, it's really hard. And it's always color association for me. In terms of like, I don't know, like I think my prime example was when I was growing up, what is it called? Tom and Jerry, the cat and the mouse, right? Like the cheese, I think there was always like a yellow with holes in it, right? So I always associate cheese with yellow, but Cheez-Its are orange. I didn't know that. No one told me, but I learned when I was like, I don't know, 18 or something that they were orange because I always associated cheese with yellow. So in reality, just me seeing colors, it's really difficult for me to process. But I still am able to, appreciate the beauty of the colors, right? So being immersed in the environment and being there when you took like the photos was one thing to see that. It was another to see it digitally because it brought me back to that memory of being there. But then once we actually got the album and the way it was printed, we chose the matte version of it. It was like pop art to me, and it was like I could reach out and feel it all over again, right? And it was a completely different experience getting that album versus that digital version. And you had already kind of warned us about that already ahead of time, that like what you see on digital and like social media, it is completely different than what you will get as a print. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. Then once we got the album, I'm like, holy crap. Like when I think it was a page where it was our suits, right? Because I can see our suits and I can, see what color they are, but like for them to be captured the way they were, plus the way it was printed, it popped out so much that I don't even know how to, I was flabbergasted when I looked at it.
We had showed it to a couple of our coworkers and they were like, wow, your suits look really well with these colors, with the fall colors. And when we kept looking at them, like, oh yeah, it does. Because it really just stood out. The vibrancy, I think, on the album was really, really good.
Yeah. And then going a little bit back to the whole budget thing, right? Like, as much as you can do research and stuff on like price points and how much people spend, for the amount of hours you spend with us and the products that you give, isn't even comparable to anybody else, right? Like you can literally be charging an arm and a leg for all that you do, but you don't. And it's not even, I wouldn't even call it reasonable, because reasonable is saying that it somewhat matches. It's not, it's beyond that, right? Because when we showed our albums to my coworkers, they were like, wait, this album, how much does this album cost? And I was like, it was part of the package. And then they're like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, it's part of the package. And they're like, how is it part of the package? You know, some of my coworkers for their weddings, they didn't even have an album.
Yeah.
They said that they regret not getting an album and all that stuff, but yours is already included, right? And then of course, if you choose to add more spreads, you can, but just the base of what we already got was beyond amazing.
But you upgraded with 5 or 10 spreads.
Yeah, like
we added more stuff.
10.
I think it was 10.
Yeah, 10 extra.
We were initially trying to budget that spread thing, but then I was like, no, there's too many good photos. We have to have them in.
You know,
but in reality, right? Like the contemplation of like adding more spreads or not adding more spreads, I think is something that I'm sure every couple does, because they're like, okay, well, you already get this for free, like, and then this is how much it's going to cost. I forgot what the actual translation and price was, but like this, I think it was like $60 per spread more, right? 600 NOK is around $60 over here. So it was like $60 per spread additional, and it was just like, when I had sat there, I don't know if I discussed this with him, but like I just sat there and I was like, okay, so I can get the base album of what he's going to print, and then I can go take the same photos that he sends me, and I can make another album that's probably way cheaper with all of the photos that I want in there. But then in reality, you're already getting one album. Why pay for a second album? And then the other part of it is like, this album is, I mean, way, way nicer than any other generic album, right? Like, because we have Shutterfly over in the US, and these photos that you get are like children's books where it's laminate and glossy paper, which is like super thin, and it's a cool book and all, but like it's not, it kind of goes back to like being like everybody else and being generic. This album is so special because of the way it's made, right? You have the linen, well, we chose the linen option with the wooden box, and then it came with gloves, which was beyond me. I didn't realize that an album needed gloves, but I can see why, because of the quality that it has, and to maintain that quality too. You don't have to use them, but it was amazing. And then we had that paper that was the inserts. The acid-free papers. So, you know, that really just made it so much more special, right? Because it just shows how delicate everything is, and how amazing it was, and how to keep it in that way. But yeah, I can't. That album is amazing.
The print,
it's still,
oh yeah,
just pops.
Yeah, it just pops beyond.
Yeah, the print quality in the album is museum grade quality. So that's why you have the paper inserts and the gloves, so you don't smudge the prints. And the print that you as consumers can get at Walgreens or Shutterfly or whatever, where you go ordering those like holiday books or whatever, that's digital print, and it's entirely different. It doesn't last that long, and the colors are a little off compared to this, like the quality in your album. One thing that hurts a lot as a storytelling photographer is when my clients choose to just cut down on their album, because that's what will last. That's your lasting impression of your wedding day or your elopement, or like your story that you paid me to photograph, right?
Yeah.
So I forgot my question completely. Because you upgraded to have a larger piece of your story in your album. Is that something, was that hard spent money, or did you, now that you received the album, what's your thoughts on spending money and upgrading? Sorry?
Say I added more.
I think the hard part is, it would have to be when you're trying to budget it. And then when you say $60 per page, and then let's say you add 10 pages, that's $600 right there. Can an everyday person make $600 easily? Maybe. I mean, for us, we're lucky that we're both nurses, and in the United States, we do make a decent amount. So for us, it would have been probably like an extra shift. So it wasn't going to be too hard for us to do it. I know for other people it can be difficult. But in the end, I want to say it's worth it because it is going to be something that's going to be with you forever. I mean, yes, we can have those photos that we wish were in that book on our phone, but it's totally different. Just swiping through it and all that stuff. It's the same thing when you're reading an ebook versus an actual book in your hand. So I want to say there are some photos that we wish we could add more in there. But I like it the way it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I just, if I had a regret, that would be my regret, is not adding more to it, right? And I really appreciated that we were able to personalize all of it to what we wanted, right? From the cover to the text that was in the front of it to just rearranging the way we wanted our photos and the way we wanted our spreads. And, I think we talked about a little bit the negative space that's in the spreads. A lot of people just want fully blown photos. But I actually, as much as I do appreciate the fully blown photos, I appreciate the ones with the negative space a little bit more.
It really does. It really balances it.
Yeah, because it just having fully blown photos all the time isn't,
it's generic.
Yeah, it's generic. There you go.
Yeah. So my thought process when planning or when designing an album is each spread tells one story, right? So by now you've had the album for a week, 2 weeks,
A week.
A week. I mean, technically, we got it Wednesday.
Oh yeah, yeah. We just didn't get it. We're on hold.
Yeah.
So yes.
By now, do both of you have you had a chance to have decided a favorite spread?
I have one in mind.
Can you find your album and just show to the camera?
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if he's going to choose the one that mine is. And if you notice, I evenly spaced those acid-free things.
Stop.
I found out that it's not a square. This is a rectangle, technically.
It is. This one's my favorite. Oh my gosh, I'm not wearing gloves. He wanted me to wear the gloves all the time.
Yeah. Oh, you like that one?
Yep. Absolutely love it. I just love how our the colors pop out. And the moments that were captured in
the acid-free stuff in there. I gotta protect it. This is the Mona Lisa.
This whole podcast episode is a commercial for my album company.
Yes.
Because I'm a full photo one, I want to say it was this one.
Yeah, I love that. Look at you guys.
Favorite.
Even though, yes, we were there for the Northern Lights, this one, I think, cuts it. I'm trying to remember.
In comparison to my phone one, right? Because it's also my phone background.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Trying to remember actually when this happened. I think we were in the muck on this one. I remember this one.
Yeah, this was over by the beach.
Because we were the thorns. We had to watch out.
Yeah, I remember.
But yeah.
Nice. Yeah, you have the custom stamp as well. Let me see.
Oh yeah, that one turned out really well. It was
really
yes.
Yeah. I was afraid that it was gonna show because I think we were talking about the color and how that it might have blended into the linen, but it turned out really, really well. I didn't know that they were gonna carve into the linen or burn it in and then do the foiling.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Looks good.
And but
Fine.
So, what's your best advice for a couple looking to elope to a different country? Like, where do you start?
Advice would be to discuss with each other where you would like to go, what area, environment, like you were saying, is more favorable. And then ultimately it would be, do you want that close, intimate, can't say wedding, that, that the exchanging of vows, or, the elopement, or did you want to actually do a wedding that is usually meant for family and friends, and spend a lot of money for that versus, you can just spend the money for yourself. Not saying it's a selfish thing, but I mean,
it's about you at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you have a full-blown wedding, you're putting on a show for everyone else, and you're not eating. You don't have time to. You have to go say your hellos and your thank yous and all that stuff. And it really isn't about you that day, and it's gonna cost you a pretty penny. But why not use that pretty penny on yourself? Because you freaking deserve it. And you've been through the journey that you had together. I'm sure it wasn't an easy one, right? So, to spend that on yourself and to treat yourself is something that everybody should do. But in reality, I think just going into whatever place you choose for your elopement, it really should come down to having that open mind type of mentality. Really goes a long way, because if you're focused only on one thing, you might miss out on all the other magic of it. So yeah, I really think that was it. And when you do the research, I really feel like you should do it together too.
Yeah.
Because you bounce off each other's ideas on what you may or may not want, and just kind of getting your full scope of who you're going to be photographed by too. It makes it really important. And I really think doing your extensive research on things is really important, because a lot of people may just see one photo, and I did, right? I started off with that. I started off with just one photo that I really liked. But at the end of it, I read through your blog. I watched a couple of your Vimeo videos. All the stuff that you provided, and then your blog in itself and the stories that you created. That's how I make a connection, right? But it's also, it's just really doing your research.
And I want to point out, if this is going to be one of those things where people are like, well, the money, would you rather spend $20,000 on a ceremony, a wedding with everyone else, or have a amazing trip to multiple countries, having that closeness with your other person, and make it super memorable? And the fact that you get to actually eat, because I know a lot of people, when they go to their wedding, the couple usually doesn't get to eat. So, I still think if I had to choose, I would be this again.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Germany, Norway, and France. Man.
Yeah. What a trip. Is there anything that you would like to add now at the end that we didn't discuss, or that I didn't ask you about?
Can we talk about your wife?
Of course, yes.
Oh my gosh, she's amazing.
Yes, isn't she?
Yeah. Just what I think our little session that we had with her and her human design was chef's kiss. I think that's what we use, right?
Use it
a lot over there. It was so nice, because it was really helpful learning the way we
are as a person.
Are as a person, the connection that we have, and how we respond to things, why we respond to things. I think that was really nice, right? And it really it was a wonderful icebreaker too, I feel like.
Oh yeah.
Just to build a relationship with people, right? Is just knowing why they are the way they are. I very much appreciate Jessica, and just that she was able to not only give us a small rundown of our human design, but also explain to us individually
Mm-hmm.
on how that worked out. So if you guys were ever interested in that, she is wonderful. She knows her shit.
And then she also told us about like, well, us as individuals, but then how we would pair together,
Right.
or what to watch out for, what to assist with, and stuff like that. That was really nice.
Yeah,
Couple sessions.
yeah, exactly.
Like a couple of us, actually.
It is, and it's extremely powerful stuff, and it's something we are experimenting a little bit, like with you guys, to gift you a session like that, and it's not for everyone yet, I think, because it's a little out there, and you probably have to be a little bit interested to begin to start to understand, right? But I have a question for you about this. So now, a couple of months later, like 3 months since Senja right now, ish.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
How has this helped you to communicate with each other, and how has it helped you understand each other, like after this session?
I'm always telling him, I'm like, whenever I'm making decisions, because I'm not supposed to be making decisions with my gut, I'm always like, I always second guess my decision. And I remember Jessica telling me that that's
What did she tell you exactly?
to trust my spleen, but it's kind of like to go with what, I don't know, like there's this feeling that you have, like your gut feeling with your photos, but mine is a different feeling, and to go with that. And there have been multiple times where he'll ask me, oh, do you want this or do you want to do that? And I'll always be like, no, okay, yeah, I do. But initially in my head, I could feel something like you should go with it, and I keep denying it. And I remember her telling me about that.
Yeah, and then I think for us too, like Bryan, I mean, we kind of talked about how I usually do a lot of things, and how Bryan tends to just sit there like a princess. But I think Jessica dove into that a little bit, and with Bryan's human design, he's a little bit more reluctant to be catered to, whereas me being a person who just runs all the time because I'm a generator, I just have this energy that just goes on and on and on and on. So I am used to just continuously moving. But I think that now that we learn these types of human designs about each other, like I back down a little bit, and he'll realize that, you know, sometimes I do need to wind down. And when I do need to wind down, he takes over. So I think that gave us a lot of perspective in terms of how to work with each other in our relationship. Because for me, like, I'm just so used to going all the time, but now I have a loving partner. So it's nice to have somebody who can take care of me during those times when I need to wind down as well. And that I don't always have to be running, 500 miles an hour at home too. So yeah, it was very enlightening to have that session with her.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, yeah, it's not for everyone, but it was definitely, I think it comes back to just being open to things, right? And just being open-minded about it. Whether or not it's something that it's a belief or something that you're gonna let influence you the rest of your life, that is completely up to you. But it's just really just sitting down and having a chat with just Jessica, right? It's just Jessica. So, but really, that's what it was, right? It was just diving in and just having a conversation. It didn't feel like a counseling session. It didn't feel like anybody was attacked for whatever, whatever personalities they may have or whatever their design is or what they're lacking or not lacking. It was, in reality, it was just a conversation, right? And that was, I give so much props to you and Jessica being able to do that, right? It takes a certain people in order to have that instant connection with people where everything is just so comfortable and it's just a normal everyday conversation, versus being forced or, you're just twiddling your thumbs and you're like, when does this end?
When is it?
Right? Completely different from that. And I appreciate that all.
Yeah.
That to me is what makes life worth living, is to connecting with other human beings.
Amen.
Yeah. And to the listeners, what Bryan and Kevin is talking about is human design. It's something that my wife, Jessica, she's been educating herself for many years now and learning more about this stuff. And it's way out there. I can just say it's based on the location and the date and time of like where and when you're born. And this will tell you something about who you are as a person. And it sounds super weird, but it's so scary accurate. And Jessica and I, we have been using this in our relationship to learn to understand each other at a much deeper level. And it has actually helped us communicate, because many times when, like, if she is angry and she's complaining or yelling at me for some reason, I have learned to understand that it's not about me. I can take this personally and it can feel painful, but it's actually something that is about her, and it's an outlet for her to be angry, right? And now when I understand that, it's easier to not take it personally and to understand, oh, she just needs to get this out and I can be here and support her in this moment, right? So that was just one example. But if anyone is interested in learning more about this, please go and check out iamjessicarain.com, Rain with REIN.com. You can learn more about what human design is. You can book a session with her and dive deeper into who you are as a person. And when you use it like Jessica did with you two, where you're using it as a couple, you can understand more about not only yourself, but also more about your partner. So it is definitely powerful stuff. It's definitely a little bit out there. But if you're like me, I'm very like, how can I put this? I'm very logic, right? So I don't pay too much attention to all the wishy-washy stuff. I just try to listen to what makes sense. So it's definitely something that is on the rise. I think at least here in Norway, it's becoming more and more commonly known, I think. But it's still a little underground, so to speak.
It is.
Yeah.
But I mean, in today's society too, like, astrology or horoscopes or whatever it may be, I think
It's out there.
it's out there, but people are pretty
Reluctant.
to it. But yeah, it's in that same scope, right? I feel like, and it's something to
Not harmful. It's just keep it opens your eyes a little bit.
Yeah.
Always wanted to say the link will be in the bio.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a great way to end this, about generally being open, right? Open-hearted, trust the process, be yourself, and focus on that, and life will be better.
No, definitely will.
Thank you guys so much for being guests on this podcast episode. I can't thank you enough, and thank you for sharing your elopement story and going deep into all the details with me and the listeners. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having us, and then thank you for being our photographer. I mean, again, this thing is gonna be with us forever, and it's just amazing. I just can't.
Yeah. No words.
No
words.
Thank you.
It was just
Thank you
amazing.
for the words.
Just amazing. I can't.
And thank you for trusting in me to be your photographer. So, all right, guys, thank you and goodbye. Likte du det du nettopp hørte, eller lærte du kanskje noe nytt? Da hadde jeg satt veldig stor pris på om du har lyst til å fortelle om denne podcasten til noen du kjenner. Eller gå på Instagram og plukk en reel som du liker, og del i storyen din, og oppfordre vennene dine og følgerne dine til å følge Bryllupspodcasten. Hvis du har noen spørsmål eller noe på hjertet, så send en melding til Bryllupspodcasten på Instagram, så skal jeg svare deg så godt jeg kan.